Hey everybody, welcome back to some more early morning barking, talking about BPD and NPD by somebody that has both. If you like the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and share me on socially things that are scrolling past the screen right now. So today, after hammering both personality disorders for a while, I thought I'd just do an NPD one. And let's talk about narcissistic supply. Thank you to the person who requested this in a comment 2 days ago. Now this is service for you, right? Narcissistic supply. This is a fun one, isn't it? Because as with all elements of NPD, we all need a tiny little bit of it to get through our lives, right? We all need positive reinforcement. Good job. You look great today. All this stuff. We need that. It's what builds us all up and gives us that little bit of self-confidence and happiness. It's good to have, right? We know that. But that's not narcissistic supply, is it really? That's just like normal stuff that people have. When we're talking about narcissistic supply, we're talking about the kind of feedback you get from people that feeds your specific type of narcissism. Okay? Again, this is one of the ones where I can only speak to my own. You will have totally different experiences to me, but hopefully sort of the guiding principles beneath everything are the same, and it'll make sense. So we get this supply in various different forms. I mean, it might come from praise, it might come from excessive praise, and we do all kinds of things to try and get it because it's feeding us. It really is narcissistic supply. It's food for what makes us feel good, right? And we do it in all kinds of ways. It might come out in the way you behave, in the way you treat people. You might even just like wearing Animal Crossing meme t-shirts that you think nobody gets. And it gives you that little bit of feeling of superiority over everybody else because they don't know Animal Crossing and they don't know the meme. And you don't get my t-shirt. So there's all these little ways that come out that make us just feel that little bit of, I'm a little bit better. I know this thing you don't know, I do this thing you don't do, and you think I'm brilliant for it. Spit. I don't like it. These are the ones that are difficult to admit, right? It's all well and good me sitting here and talking about BPD and feeling sad and, oh, my hypersensitivity and bad childhood, etc. It's difficult to talk about in the sense that I have to sort of go through the experience and relive these emotions and that sort of thing. Whereas the narcissistic supply, the NPD stuff, is difficult to talk about because I have to admit that this is what goes on in my head. And it's not always pleasant. It's not always nice. It's not something that makes people think, hey, this is someone I'd like to spend some more time with. And I totally understand that. And so as a consequence, it's sort of difficult for me to admit these things publicly, in the thought that this might do me some sort of damage if people know this about me. But at the same time, I'm far from alone in this, and I'm far from the worst, so maybe talking about it just actually helps. My own narcissism revolved around work-related things. Mostly. As I've said, it permeates every aspect of life. You know, for me, it mainly focused on work, but I'll happily brag about how good I think I am at Mario Kart and various other things. And it comes out a lot. But rather than it playing out in my immediate romantic relationship as much, it came out in friendships and in my own public persona. That I was the podcasting guy, and I got so much positive feedback to an alarming degree over a long period of time that it became something that I was hungry for, something that I needed, something that I thrived on. I wanted people to be intimidated when they met me. I wanted people to be nervous as hell because they're meeting Richard Smith, the guy from all the podcasts that they listen to. That there was no difference between meeting me and an actual famous person that we've all heard of. The thrill of that is like nothing else I've ever experienced. And trust me, I've been on the look for it, right? I've put some work into finding stuff, and I haven't found anything that made me feel as good in the moment as somebody who couldn't physically speak to me when they met me. That's it. It's such a supply. It feeds that narcissism. It builds you up. It makes you stronger. It makes you feel like you're unstoppable. Like all those beliefs of superiority in your head are actually true. Because look, here are people behaving like they are. And when you get that a little bit, you get hungry for it and you want more and you want more. And when it doesn't come, you throw tantrums and you behave like an entitled arsehole. And so what are you supposed to do with that? I don't entirely know, right? These come into the category of things that I don't think are ever going to go away for me. I think these things will always be there. From my own looking into it, NPD is something that develops in childhood and sort of gets worse and gets worse as you get older. And you either grow out of it and become a normal human being, or you don't, and it keeps going, and eventually you're sat where I am. And I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this, where it comes from in childhood. And it comes from school. It comes from... I went to a particularly uptight secondary school where we were all created to become this group of entitled little narcissistic shits. Right. I remember my first day in sixth form where the first lesson was not physics. It was, let's mathematically work out how good you all are for just being here doing A-levels. And then how much better you are than everybody else for doing those A-levels at this school. And then how good you are within this school for doing these particular A-levels. That was actually a lesson I sat through. A lesson that was supposed to be physics, but was actually about how awesome I was. And granted, it was also about how awesome the other 32 people in the class were. But you can imagine how this all just feeds in and piles on. And now we're all fairly fucked up adults, right? For some people, it has clearly worked out. My sixth form became a lot of highly paid professional people across the board. Or we crashed and burned, and didn't do so well. But clearly, we're all just a tiny bit fucked up and twisted from it. And then for me, it came on when I started playing in band. I mean, the problem is, right, what if the thing that gives you supply is something that you're genuinely good at, right? What if you are better at everybody else in your world at this thing? And every time you do it, everybody's kind of a little bit in awe of what you do. Even if you know that you're maybe only average at something. And every time you do that, because everyone else can't do any of it, you look amazing. But you know, really, if you sit me next to somebody who really knows what they're doing, I'm going to look like a dickhead. I also have a similar thing with programming, computer coding. If you know nothing of coding, what I can do is fucking amazing. If you know anything about coding, what I can do is really remedial, right? It just depends who you're talking to. I've kind of got off on one a little bit with that one, haven't I? Did I ramble? Never mind. Let's bring it back. So for me, all of the narcissistic supply that I had as a child, as a developing teenager that carried over into adulthood, was all sort of work, professional, skill related. And so it became a very vulnerable narcissism. It was very easily challenged and very easily knocked down because it was based on bullshit. I'm not the best bass player in the world. I just think I am. And that is so easily broken down because I'm so not the best bass player in the world that maybe it even becomes easier if I just don't play in public anymore. Let's just maintain this illusion that I'm fucking amazing. And if everybody believes that, then okay, fine. We don't need to prove otherwise, do we? We don't need to confirm that I'm amazing, and we don't need to confirm that I'm not. So just leave it in the corner, play at home, where no one can see. I'm actually not bad, if I'm honest. But so yeah, what do you do when you're actually genuinely pretty good at something? What about if this narcissistic supply you're getting is actually somewhat genuine? And that thrill of it never goes away. Well, we have to control the external, right? We have to realize what feeds us, when we're being fed, and how we react when we're full up, and how we react when we're hungry. Be aware, depending on your type, on what it is that feeds you, there is potential for you to treat people badly here to get this supply. There's potential for you to be a total arsehole to people because it might get you what you want, and what you want is that feeding of the narcissism. You have to ration it a bit, right? Be aware, be very aware. Look, just doing these videos, I'm trying to be as aware as possible. What I'm aware of is that I am this close. I'm doing this a lot this week. This close to getting caught up in it a bit. There have been a few hairy moments for me. I don't know what that means exactly. It's not like I'm going to go out and start behaving inappropriately or being an arsehole in some way, but it is a sort of, it breeds a certain complacency when you think you're doing well. I mean, this is how it mostly affected me negatively in work before, that you think you're doing better than you are. And consequently, when you manage to see through the narcissism, you see everything's gone to shit. And you have to try and pick up the pieces, which is almost impossible because that's not only not feeding your narcissism, it's knocking it down at the same time. Which is painful. That realization that you aren't special, you aren't better than everybody else, you're just a normal person, and look at all the mess you've made. That's such a hard thing to break down and get through to and admit to. Because it's depressing as hell when you figure it out. All this stuff you've missed out on and the narcissistic supply that you got just helped you knock it down. You've got to find out what fuels me. What is this thing that I am craving for? Where do I get that supply? How do I get it? What do I go through to get it? And how do I react to it when I'm fed? I've talked a lot about writing down what is the ideal reaction to have in which circumstance, and this is a good thing to do that with. How to stay humble, how to know that you aren't big and special. Keep it in mind. Keep hold of that fact if you can. If you've managed to break through and are getting better, if you've managed to realize that these thoughts, these feelings aren't real, that they're vulnerable, they're based on trying to protect yourself from things you don't want to admit to yourself. If you can break through that, then you can start to analyze, where am I getting this supply from? Do I need it? How do I react to getting it? How do I behave in general as a result? And keep a grip on reality, right? I would like to brag about my fantastically successful YouTube channel, about how things are going really well, because to a certain extent, this is already going better than I expected it to. But the realistic thing to keep a hold of is, as I record this, there are 218 subscribers to my channel. In YouTube terms, that is fuck all. that might as well be nobody. It's a lot of people if they turn up for you to sit in your living room, but in terms of YouTube subscriber numbers, it's non-existent. It doesn't move the dial. I'm barely a blip, right? And I'm trying to hold on to that. I'm doing all right. That's my little life preserver right there. That little bit of realism. As much as I'm obsessively checking stats all the time and looking at views and percentage changes in figures, it's only 218 subscribers. And let's be honest, right? Even in dream terms, right? Most optimistic outcome possible for me on my YouTube channel. I'm no fucking PewDiePie. I mean, it's a mental health channel. I've gone and limited my audience immediately, right? There's only so good there's only so popular this channel could ever be. Regardless of how well I perform, how good I am, how entertaining I am, there's a limit to this, right? And I'm just trying to hold on to that and not let it become everything to me, because this feeds me. This fills me up. Just doing this, talking to you lot. This is narcissistic supply right here. I feel like the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, to be perfectly honest. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know I've had some positive experiences, enough to share with people who've had no positive experiences in getting better. I'm just holding on to that. You're not as good as you think you are, Rich. You're doing well. Keep going. But you're not the king of YouTube, right? You haven't won. You're not beating anybody. You're not in a competition with anybody. Just make your damn videos and leave it there. The problem's going to come when I start expanding this. This is another thing that's holding off on the podcast bit. Apart from the fact that I genuinely can't think of anything good to do, so I'm not doing anything. But that narcissistic supply for me is going to grow at that point. And once it's an actual podcast in podcast land, it might grow a bit faster than this did. I don't know. And I'm concerned about getting that supply. That said, again, holding on to that life preserver. Not as big as I think I am. I'm not as good as I think I am. There's always room for improvement, always room for things to do better. But even that is a double-edged sword, because then you start thinking, well, why am I shit? Oh, God, do you see? This is such a difficult thing to navigate through. And really, while the water is rough, I just have to concentrate on keeping everything on the boat. That was a weird analogy. But I feel like I've got a grip on it, so to speak. I know what's feeding me. I know how it makes me feel. I know where it comes from. And when I see it, when that food comes, I can say, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And scurry off to my corner and eat my food and feel a little bit better about myself. And just get on with my day. With that little bit of boost, with that little bit of confidence. Take things for what they are, not what you wish they were. And try and keep hold of reality. It's so easy to lose sight of. It's so easy to get caught up in those delusions of grandeur, of that whole, I'm going to take over the world with this thing. Again, I think another reason why I ended up making mental health videos, because no one's taken over the world with mental health videos. It's just not happening. And that's a good idea for me. Limiting possible goals, because then I don't get caught up on the big impossible goal that I'll never achieve and stops me doing anything. God, this is going on long. There's so much to this. I'm going to have to revisit it at some point, I think, because there's so many elements to this. It permeates through so much of life. And can come with so many negative effects to it. Anyway, I'll leave it there for today because I've talked for long enough. Let me know in the comments what feeds you. How does your narcissistic supply needs differ from mine? Because I'd be interested to see what other people go through with this and how you deal with it if you have indeed found a way to deal with it. That said, if we're talking about it, this is progress. This is good, right? Any talking about the NPD is good because it means that we're trying to get better, which means that we know there's something wrong in the first place. Okay? Right then. You lot take care. I'll see you later. Bye.